Crocodile River, flowing out from Johannesburg to Hartbeespoort Dam, has been used by the reef's canoeists for the past 30 years or so. The river has in fact kept canoeing alive on the Witwatersrand, because with the region's sparse rainfall, opportunities for paddling are few and far between. Over the years, the sport has grown and grown, and today there are 19 canoe clubs on the reef. To the reef's canoeists, the flooded Crocodile means total freedom. This was the happy situation until a few years ago, when a small group of canoeists were out enjoying the serenity of the river, and an event occurred that was to change things dramatically. One of the group, computer consultant Clem Dunstan, picks up the story.
We came across a lady sitting in the bush next to which looked like a four-wheel drive Suzuki Jeep. She promptly got up, got in the Jeep and drove off. We never took much notice of this, but a kilometre or two further down the river, we came across a cable that was strung across the river, and on closer inspection found that the cable was connected to a generator on the side of the bank. One of the canoeists touched the cable and found that it was electrified. We forced our way through the cable, and at this point in time the owner on the left-hand bank stepped out from behind a bush with a shotgun and fired it at us and said that we were under arrest for trespassing on his property.
Unfortunately for the landowner, there were two lawyers in Clem's group. They briefed him on his rights concerning the firing of guns, and the group paddled on. At about the same time, threatening signs began appearing along the river banks, and there were incidents with the landowner at a bridge crossing the river. These incidents on the bridge continued over the following months, and included the same landowner driving his car over this bridge and over a number of canoes that were actually stopped on the bridge during a portage. And he also took pot shots at various canoeists. The situations came to a head when Dr. Graham Monteith, a Springbok canoeist, was actually shot.
We came to a stretch of river where this individual was standing on the bank, and he demanded to know our names and addresses. And we were already halfway past him at that stage, so we turned round and came back up, and he began haranguing us and insisted that he wanted to put us under arrest. I said, well, on what grounds is he going to arrest us? And he said, for trespassing. So I said, well, we're not trespassing, we're on the river and you don't own the river. Things continued in that sort of vein for a while, and then eventually he put up his shotgun and aimed it at me and shot me.
Dr. Monteith was hit in the face by a rubber bullet, and the doctors who operated on him said he was very fortunate to be alive. For the canoeists, the shooting of Dr. Monteith was a last straw. The Transvaal Canoe Union laid charges against Mr. Chris Martinez and his wife Laura Lee, and the fight was on to decide who has the right to use the Crocodile River. In court, it transpired that Chris Martinez and his wife had bought a property on the Crocodile downstream of the bridge a few years earlier. Like many other riverside properties, its title deed stated that the boundary was the middle of the Crocodile. They felt the canoeists were trespassing and invading their privacy. The canoeists, on the other hand, were fighting for the very survival of their sport, as a judgment against them might well have sunk canoeing countrywide. The court case was long and bitter, and eventually landed up in the Bloemfontein Supreme Court, where it was ruled that the canoeists had the right to use the Crocodile River. The judgment was based on a principle of law that went back 2,000 years, to when Julius Caesar allowed his people to use the waterways of the Roman Empire. In terms of Roman Dutch law, the system on which our law is based, land under a river may belong to someone, but the water flowing over it is state property. All riverside properties, therefore, have their boundaries in the middle of the river to prevent disputes if the river should ever dry up. In the case of the Crocodile, this doesn't happen too often nowadays, as Johannesburg's stormwater drains and sewage works ensure a constant flow. The court ruled that as long as canoeists gained legal access to the river, they could paddle on it. Countrywide, they applauded the decision. But the court's decision didn't please everyone. In fact, Mrs. Martinez was so upset by the decision that she wrote to a local newspaper saying, Due to the fact that the Roman law clearly conflicts with our more modern water law and rights of property ownership, I respectfully submit that the Supreme Court decision was wrong. Even so, in the light of the court's ruling, everyone was relieved that the case was over and that the matter was settled. But the happy situation did not last very long. Another situation arose when Miss Julie Getliff was paddling with her fiancé Max Chambers, and they had to portage over this bridge during a race. The water situation there was obviously quite different. Now it's rushing over the bridge, then the water just reached the top and was running underneath the bridge. As they stopped for the portage, their canoe toppled over, and Julie was sucked under the flooded bridge straight into a turbine that had just been installed in one of the arches.
Her clothing got caught in the pulley wheels and the fan belt, and she was being slowly strangled by this machine. We managed to get her life jacket off, but we couldn't stop the pulley wheels turning, which had actually grabbed her shirt, and this was acting like a tourniquet. I remember shouting that somebody should try and stop the paddle wheel, and eventually this happened, and with the help of some very strong people, there were some Natal canoeists, we were actually pulling on the fan belt, and we managed to release her.
On investigating, the canoeists found that Chris Martinez had installed the turbine, and the fight between the parties flared up all over again. In court, the canoeists argued that the turbine was a threat to their safety and impeded their use of the river. In due course, the device was removed. And so the saga dragged on until late last year, when we decided to take a look at the issue. We approached the Martinezes for their side of the story, but they chose not to air their views. Instead, we went along to the Crocodile to see the problems firsthand. We chose for our investigation a day when there'd be an unusually high number of canoeists on the river. It's the Transvaal Singles Championships. It's a doozy qualifier, and there are lots of Natal paddlers. It starts here at Lanseria and ends 26 kilometers downstream at Broederstroom. The race was in fact going past the Martinez property, so it would give us a good idea of the extent of their problem, and also the opportunity of talking to other landowners along the banks. Although there were some 400 canoeists taking part in this race, the canoeists pointed out that these big events on the Crocodile happen only about 3 or 4 times a year. The rest of the time, the river is used by small groups of canoeists for their training sessions or pleasure trips. The action wasn't only confined to the river, because many of the seconds were having trouble getting their cars up the steep sand roads leading to the water. At one of the big rapids, I saw canoeists getting into trouble and wondered if by climbing out of their boats onto the rocks, they were not trespassing. I asked a legal expert about this and was told that trespass occurs only when there was intention to trespass. Canoeists who had no intention of stopping could therefore not be considered trespassers. By the time we got to the Friday's Farm Bridge here behind me, the canoeists had spread out quite considerably. We then went further downstream to another landowner who has trouble with the canoeists, Mr. Rob Gorbett of Lanseria.
May I start off by saying, though, that I have nothing against canoeists. It seems like it's an outdoor sport. It looks like a fun sport. I'm sure it's something that I would enjoy. We bought this property a year ago, and we bought it because it's out in the country, it's quiet out here, and we enjoy nature. Canoeists coming down this river make a great deal of noise, not just shouting and screaming, which happens frequently, but also the scraping against the rocks. Now, if that was 1 or 2 canoeists in one day, or even half a dozen, it wouldn't bother us over much. But on occasions we have, when there's a race down the river, 400 or more canoeists coming right past the front of our house. We've had canoeists walking through our front garden. We've had them walking through our front gate. They disturb greatly the wildlife in this area. There are, for example, legavans along the riverbank, and as you probably know, they spend time on the riverbank and would be disturbed by anything coming down the river.
I asked Rob if he saw any solution to his problem.
One of the reasons that we came out here was possibly to run some game. Now, if we decide to run game, we would need to game fence the river, which would of course put a stop to the canoeists coming down the river.
But further along the river, there seemed to be less ill feeling amongst the landowners.
I have no problem with canoeists using the river at all. I find them friendly, unobtrusive, rather a pleasant presence altogether.
I've lived here for 15, 16 years, and I have never had any problem with them at all. In fact, I will go further to say I have helped them when they have been in trouble with broken canoes.
I would have thought that every canoeist is a lover of nature, and everyone that takes up canoeing will become a lover of nature, and therefore help to preserve this wonderful nature that we have in the future.
The race took about 3 hours to complete, and by the time I got to the finish, I saw only the tail enders drifting in. I had a chance to talk to the chairman of the Transvaal Canoe Union about how they felt regarding the criticisms directed at them.
TCU is extremely concerned about this issue. We have appointed a committee under one of our members who's going to look at the whole issue that concerns both ourselves and the farmers, the riparian landowners on this particular river. And hopefully, if we can address their concerns and at the same time upfront our concerns to the farmers, we're sure that we can find a peaceful way forward. There is a concern that the canoeists might be disturbing the wildlife. We're not sure that we agree with that. Because I think equally canoeists are very, very concerned about the environment. They are concerned about wildlife. As evidence of that, during this year, on 2 occasions, the Transvaal Canoe Union has organized cleanup campaigns of this river. We've got filth on this river out of Johannesburg, Randburg and Soweto. Plastic bags, you won't believe what you find in this river. And our canoeists have shown their concern for the river by getting in their boats and walking on the riverbank on a Sunday to clean the river up. So I think that proves that we do have a concern.
To demonstrate their sincerity in this regard, the Canoe Union has drawn up a code of conduct for its members. This has been displayed at all the entry points along the Crocodile River. For them, the river is a valuable whitewater training ground as well as an important outlet from the pressures of city life. The Crocodile River controversy has a long way to go before it's over, but hopefully reason will prevail on all sides. A city the size of Johannesburg needs avenues of recreation, and for a number of people, canoeing is this avenue. Hopefully a compromise can be worked out that'll take everyone's interests into account. Well, as for me, I've decided to give this canoeing lark a bash, so here goes.